Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hiba Youssef.
And I think we've seen this return to office mandates have kicked women out of the workforce. And the thing I keep coming back to, this is not inevitable. This is a choice that leaders are making at every level. And they are deciding that having some sense of control and also their real estate costs are more important than half the population having fair economic participation.
Let's be honest, HR doesn't have a data problem. It has a what do we actually do with this problem? Quantum Workplace helps leaders unlock talent insights that are often siloed, connecting engagement, performance, and development into a single clear view of your workforce. Because clarity leads to better decisions and better teams. Visit quantumworkplace.com to learn more. Welcome back to your favorite podcast. I'm Hiba, your host, resident hater, and somewhat burned out HR professional, I will admit it. This season is all about new. And I mean, it's a new year, so why not? New ideas, new rules, new ways of working that actually reflect the world we're in, not the one that most leadership systems were built for. And today I want to talk about something we constantly hear, but rarely unpack with any sort of depth. Gen Z is different. Millennials are different. Okay, but how? And more importantly, what's actually new about how younger leaders approach power, work, and impact. Because what I'm seeing isn't really a generation that's disengaged or entitled. It's a generation that's refusing to inherit these broken systems that we have let run. So I'm joined today by Amanda Litman, somebody who has spent years studying how younger people organize, lead, and build power differently, and who isn't interested in sugarcoating what institutions are getting wrong. We're talking about the leadership myths that are dying, the behaviors that feel scary to older leaders, but are often just unfamiliar, and what leaders need to unlearn if they actually want to make room for what's next. Amanda, welcome to the pod.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so pumped. I have your book here next to me. I can't wait to read you my favorite quote from it. We're going to have a good time. This is so wild. When I met you, so I walked into the Charter Workplace Summit, and there's like a whole stack of books. And I was like, books, my love, my number one love in life is books. I'm currently surrounded by about 50,000 stacks of them. And you can't see, but down here near my hips are stacks of books on both sides of this bookshelf. So I beeline it for the books and I see yours. And I was like, oh my God, I was just about to buy this on bookshop.org. I plugged it in the newsletter. Like I said, people should check it out. And then I picked it up and somebody was like, she's here, right? And I was like, she's here? What do you mean? And then I ended up meeting you, but not knowing it was you as I was like clutching your book. And I was like, please, will you sign my book for me?
So lovely. It makes me so happy because you write this book, it's a very solitary endeavor, and then it goes out in the world. You're like, I hope people like it. It's none of my business if they don't, but I hope they like it.
That's how I feel publishing every newsletter, though. I'm like, will someone please reply to this newsletter and say that this was the best thing they read today? Or when I stick in really funny jokes that I like giggle to myself while I'm writing, I'm like, I hope somebody appreciates how many Buffy references I've managed to sneak into one newsletter. The other thing that I learned about you on social media recently, and we're not getting through an episode without talking about this, you are also a big romance reader.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a favorite author?
Do I have a favorite author? It rotates from day to day. I need to go back and read Emily Henry, given that People I Love on Vacation is now on Netflix. But I just got through, I think, Sarah Adams, like the whole series set in Rome, Kentucky. I read the last two over the holidays, and I was like, oh yeah, I love a good small town romance. Right into my veins.
I am more of like an enemies to lovers. Ooh. Everyone who has listened to this pod has heard me talk about it extensively. Like I don't like second chance romances. This is actually a big fight between me and my direct report where she loves like second chance romances or childhood friend to lover. And I'm like, I want to talk about them hating each other and then them loving each other because that feels more real to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I feel that way. I feel like with second chance romances, like you dumped him the first time. It didn't work. Also, then it made me think. I was like, wait a minute. Like, I can't be anyone's second chance romance because like it didn't work the first time. It's not going to work the second time for me. My personal favorite is Allie Hazelwood. I have this so good.
I want to meet her someday. Every book she writes, I pre-order. I have like a special edition over here, and that's of the Love Hypothesis, and that's coming out as a movie as well. And I'm like, finally, people just need to give Allie Hazelwood. This woman cranks out more books than I don't even know how she does it. It's like 3 a year at this point.
Have you read a bunch of Tessa Bailey?
I have.
Tessa Bailey is my go-to for when someone's like, what should I read to get into romance novels? I'm like, start with Fixer Up by Tessa Bailey and just see how you feel. A lot of like petite women getting thrown over men's shoulders, but it's really nice. Oh, also Sarah McLean. My girl, Sarah McLean is like one of the OG, not OG, but like one of the current contemporary writers who focuses on historical romance. And it's always like badass women. In every single one of her books, like somebody punches a guy and then they have really hot sex. Like it's great.
I love it. Okay, I'm writing that one down because I've never read anything she's written. But
she's phenomenal.
Again, I'm just surrounded by stacks and stacks of books everywhere. So it'll just make me happy to add more to my collection. I love that we're talking about this too, because I think when people ask me, like, they're like, oh, you read so many, you read 100 books last year. What'd you read? Like, what workbooks are you reading? And I'm like, pause. I am not reading to read about the thing I'm experiencing every day. I'm literally reading about romance. I'm reading romance novels, and people are like, wow, you're like so open about what you read. And I'm like, why would I be afraid of that? It is, but it like really brings me to the topic that we're talking about here about like how leadership looks so different today, because it really was like 10, 15 years ago when I entered the workplace. Like, you didn't tell anyone anything personal about yourself. Leaders rarely showed any vulnerability. They usually just disguised messages and hoped that you understood that it was a message from above, not from them. Like, it's interesting seeing how the world has radically changed. But before we get into the leadership change and how I can now openly talk about romance novels without fearing the stigma, I'm asking every guest this season, what's one new thing you want to learn this year?
Connected to what we were just talking about, I want to learn how to write a romance novel. I have on my desk currently like Story Genius. I have Save the Cat writes a novel. My New Year's resolution is to try and write a romance novel, and I want to learn how to do it.
I need to introduce you to Georgia Clark. She's been on the podcast before. She's a romance writer. She does writers retreats. She's my writer's coach as well. I also want to write a romance novel.
I love this. All right, accountability buddies. We're going to get this done.
When I don't want to write about work. People are like, write a book about work. I'm like, I'll do that. But I also want to write a crazy romance novel of like all and I want my name on it. Like people were like, would you be afraid that your mom would read it or your coworkers would read it? I'm like, read it.
Read it.
What do I got to hide? I'm already reading romance novels, posting about them every day. Like, I got nothing to hide.
That's right.
It is very interesting to be this way though, because I think a lot of people expect executives to like have a certain air about them and like not be human and not do things like read romance novels or cry or experience emotions or have frustration. So I feel like I'm just coming into what real leadership should actually be, which is just myself.
Yeah, it should. And I think that is what, millennials and Gen Z, as we're going to talk about, are doing differently, is bringing our real selves, not necessarily our full selves, but our real selves into these leadership positions and changing what it means to have a relationship with power.
Yeah. What do you think is structurally new about how these younger leaders are thinking about power, work, and impact? Like, everyone's like, oh, the vibes are different, but like,
well, I think there's a couple things happening at the same time. One is a realization, especially over the last, for most, if you're a millennial, you graduated college into the recession or you entered a really complicated workplace. If you're Gen Z, like COVID really fucked up your shit. You have a very different relationship to the role that work should play in your life. It is not going to be, and it cannot be, your end all be all of your identity. It can't be the only thing you are. Mm-hmm. Your job can be important and be a source of dignity and economic compensation and healthcare benefits and all of those things. But it can't be the most interesting thing about you or the only thing about you. Mm. And that's true if you're just an employee, but it's especially true and even harder to navigate if you're a leader. So one of the challenges of next gen leaders is what I sort of collectively call millennials and Gen Z is, my job is a big part of who I am, but it's not the only part of who I am. Mm-hmm. That's happening at the same time as the rise of social media or like the prominence of social media, and in particular, the decline of trust of institutions and the increase of trust in individuals. Like, you and I both have pretty prominent online presences. We have done this in a way that like gives people a chance to know us and to also trust us and trust our work. As a leader, like, I run a company of 30 people. I've managed teams as big as 60 over the last couple of years. It's a multi-million-dollar political nonprofit. My online presence is as much a part of my leadership as the way that I show up in a meeting or the way that I have a one-on-one or the way that I set up an all-staff retreat. All of that comes together to tell a story of who I am and how they understand me. And if I'm not thinking about that intentionally, I can sabotage myself. And that intentionality is, again, the hard thing and the opportunity for next gen leaders. Like, I don't know about you, I've been online since I was 6 years old. My first email address was amandalitm@aol.com because that's how many characters you could fit in an AOL screen name. I've been thinking about like public presentation of self since I was trying to flirt over AIM away message when I was in middle school. Like, it's just, I've always been online. I've always been performing myself online. Now, what does it mean to do that when my employees follow me on Instagram? Or, my donors who give to my organization follow me on Facebook or are my Facebook friends. Like, it is a very different understanding of negotiating public and private persona. The third thing that is happening is from a lot of people, their workplaces have moved online, or at least partially online. Remote work, hybrid work, flexible work has changed the way you need to build office and team culture. So again, you and I have been in chat rooms and building online communities, and some of our best friends are probably over group chats. Our best friendships are happening over group chat. And how does it feel to cultivate a team and a work culture when that office is over Slack and my executive presence is over Zoom? How do I do that in a way that works and that feels true and also gets the work done, which is at the end of the day, the most important thing.
Yeah. It's so interesting. So you're right. Like I remember the time though before internet and now having internet. So I feel like elder millennials or millennials have like a really interesting, we remember playing outside, but then we also remember the AIM, I hope my crush sees my away message and knows it's about them, to coding on MySpace and HTML and people being like, what were we doing coding all these things and trying to put our top 8 in our songs. And and now I look at it now and it is very interesting. I think it's like increasingly hard to be private in this time and age. Like when I meet somebody with no social media presence, I'm like, who are you? Tell me more. But that is like a lot of people. But I think especially for us as leaders, and I know a lot of HR tech companies are moving into this space where they want to hire a chief people officer who also is like a public persona of their company. And so I'm watching that happen. I think more and more executives are also going to have to be brand builders online. And you're going to have to really start to ask yourself, like, who am I on the internet? And is that person the same as who I actually am? Because I think it's really hard to be fake on the internet these days too. Like your employees will see right through it.
And it was interesting, for when we're in charge for the book I wrote about next gen leadership, I talked to more than 130 leaders across the country, millennial and Gen Z executives. And a number of them, that's right, a number of them were prominent sort of influencers who run companies. And I think it's really interesting, influencer, I do not mean that in a derogatory way in the slightest. An influencer is a small, or in some cases, a big business. And they're being really thoughtful about community building, about intentional communication, about converting people to action. And they would tell me, like, I'm acutely aware that if I show up poorly in a Zoom meeting, it could be recorded and amplified. And because I have a big public profile, it could ruin my business. So every part of my leadership persona has to be consistent. And again, this is so hard. That's why I think in particular, millennial leaders, a lot of the studies have shown, are feeling burnt out because this is really, really difficult.
I mean, I feel it firsthand. It is very interesting. I think like life for me really crystallized and I was like able to show up and act accordingly to my values. And I think like if it feels like such a privilege sometimes to be able to be myself. Because, when everyone was like, bring your whole self to work. And I was like, whoa, do not bring your whole self to work because a lot of environments are not safe and are not accepting of your whole self. I happen to be in an environment that is, and so I get to do that. And I think that makes the job so much easier where it's like less about burning out as showing up as myself and more about burning out over just the massive amount of work that I see ahead of us as like an industry. And how do we actually position HR leaders as the future of companies versus just overhead, which like my CEO is telling me this morning, there's a tweet going viral on Twitter, which like always happens. This happens like every other month. Someone tweets about how useless HR is. And then everyone gets in the comments and they're like, it's the most useless function at a company. It's corporate police. It's this, it's that. You could automate their entire job. And he and I were talking about like what makes a great HR leader. And I was like, that tweet is just always going to happen. But it is just overwhelming to also be an HR influencer and know that the whole public also perceives you very differently than you perceive yourself and the work that you're getting done. So, I mean, it's a really interesting time to look at who's building brands on the internet and what does that mean for their businesses. And you're right, like a lot of influencers have whole businesses that started from them dancing on TikTok or doing makeup tutorials on TikTok. And now they have a whole new following of people who are buying their makeup. So it's kind of wild to me that that is where we're at. And I think it is a part of it is because of the younger generation kind of refusing to inherit these like false leadership myths. So like the only way you get power is by having a C-suite letter in front of your title.
And like we're seeing this in media too, where you don't trust the New York Times, you trust the columnist or Jamel Bowie, who you might see on your TikTok feed. You don't trust the Washington Post, you trust Dave Jorgensen, who has been running their TikTok and their YouTube and then left to start his own thing. Like it's not the institution, it's the people. I think that for companies has to be like part of the way that you function, in which the CEO, the founder, whatever the sort of leader is in the team, it's not about the brand name or even the job title. It's about who they are and how they show up and the temperature that they set, like both vibes wise and literally, and the way in which they create space for people to be both good at their jobs and also real people.
Yeah. Like, why do you think we had these leadership myths last as long as they did, where it was like you had to be a certain way to be a leader, or you had to honestly look a certain way to be a leader?
It was
why
so
do you think those
interesting.
myths? Yeah.
I went back and read a bunch of old management and leadership books over the last couple of years. One, so many of them were written by either old white dudes or military dudes or both. There was, I think, when I remember scrolling like the Amazon top, leadership and business books, outside of Brene Brown, not a single one was written by a woman. It took you to like 10 to find one by a woman. And in the top 5, I think there was one written by someone under the age of 40. It's like, okay, you probably haven't been in the weeds in a while. Part of it is that, but I remember reading one about studies around executive presence, and they were looking at surveys from 2012, which was like not that long ago. Like I graduated college in 2012, what, 13 years. Is that right? For almost 14 years.
14.
Like, what year is it?
Me every day.
And one of the top rated needs for a leader was physical fitness, was being toned. I was like, basically being like either buff or thin as a woman. And I was like, that's not like the 60s. That's now. That's current day. And I remember reading that thinking, well, at least we've sort of gotten away from that. Although like, but I do think that there is a force function happening here, which is as more women, more leaders of color, more LGBTQIA folks, more sort of like quote unquote non-traditional folks take positions of power or inherit positions of power as they are forced off the glass cliff that I'm sure you've talked about before. They simply look, feel, sound, operate differently. And that is in the process expanding what leadership looks like. Now, change is hard. Anyone who's ever gone to the gym and tried to do weightlifting, like the next day you're really sore and it hurts.
Got to keep going.
Change is hard. Growth is hard. It hurts.
Yeah.
But you get to the other side and you're hopefully better for it.
Yeah. It's so interesting you make that point about the leadership books because I was at the train station. I think I told this story on the podcast last season. I was at the train station last year, DC to New York, and then there's a section called like leadership books, and every single one of them was written by a man. And I took a picture and sent it to my direct report, and I said, what's the one thing you notice here? And she goes, every single book is written by a man. And she has heard me at length say, like, men experience the workplace very differently than women. I'm not saying that they can't write a book about the workplace and it still be relevant, but all of us have perspective, lived experience, and bias that even if we're the best people on this earth, it's impossible to get through that. So you're already writing from a position of power and authority, whereas I do feel like people from underrepresented groups have had to like claw our way to that power to be able to be taken seriously to a certain extent. And I love the fact that you're saying like change takes time, because I used to hate that. I used to be like, no, that's a cop out, that it could happen overnight. And the longer I'm in corporate America, I'm like, oh God, this is a daily battle we are having to, move the needle in a way where we have more women represented as like Fortune 500 CEOs. And I mean, especially this year, which has been 2025 was traumatic for most women because we had more women leave the workplace in 2025 than left it when COVID started. Yeah. And the numbers are Yeah, anywhere from 200,000 to 400,000 are the numbers I've seen. I'm like, what are we going to do if there's no different representation at the top, which a lot of people look to that representation to say, okay, there's a place for me here.
I talked to one Black woman in Hollywood who was telling me how all of her mentors were older white men. Most of her mentors were older white men. She was like, I appreciate their advice. It's very helpful. It's supportive, but I also have to always take it with a grain of salt because, one of them told me like, oh, you have this project that, didn't succeed. You could just try again. Like I would just, make a documentary about the project that failed. And she was like, I don't get to do that. I don't get a chance to fail and turn that in. Like that is not something that is available to me as a Black woman in this position, is what she told me. She's like,
I remember.
You just can't.
Yeah. No, you don't get that go again. And so I had a mentor early in my career who was a man. And at one point he was like, you are starting to become a little too much like me. And he's like, what you forget is I have way more experience than you. I show up in a room differently than you. Like, I think I need to find you another mentor. And he like went to our organization and found two women and said, pick which one you want to be your mentor. I picked the Black woman and she also helped me immensely in my career. Years later, like she coached me for maybe 2 years. She really taught me what it was like to show up as an executive in rooms and really helped me rethink like why I got so mad about certain things and how not to let that frustration show in a room because people wouldn't be able to hear the message I was delivering if if I seemed too frustrated when I was delivering it. And like her advice stuck with me to this day, but it really took me having a different type of mentor to actually figure out how I show up in rooms. But I mean, it's very true. Like the representation at that level, especially in Hollywood, we just had the Golden Globes on Sunday. There was a new podcast category, which yay for us. All of the nominees were mostly white presenting. There was one ensemble cast that was for NPR, and I think that had people from underrepresented groups, but all of the other podcasts were all white presenting people. 25 people were nominated, 25 podcasts made into the category. I think when I was looking at them, about 17 of them had white presenting hosts. And I just like have to say, as a woman of color who has a podcast, and I follow and listen to a lot of podcasts by other women of color, it made me so mad. Because I was like, where is our representation? If Gen Z is the most diverse generation that's ever existed to date, which makes me assume Gen Alpha will be even more diverse, why do we not see that representation when we look at our publicly traded company boards or Hollywood movies or directors being nominated for Best Director, which is a historically male category?
Yeah. Well, I think this is the thing is, millennials are more diverse than Gen X, Gen Z even more so, Gen Alpha going to become even more so. So it's going to happen. It is an inevitability unless they intentionally decide to not give power to women and people of color. But like, this is one of the things that I really sort of tried to articulate as I was going through the book writing process is leadership is going to look different because our leaders are going to look different in the next 10 years, whether you like it or not. Yeah, I like it. I think it's good. A hot take in 2026, diversity is good. But I think it is good. I think it is both like a moral good, but also it is good for outcomes. It is good for outcomes to have diverse teams. It is better for your business. It's better for your bottom line. Every amount of social science research and business research tells us this. It is good. So how do you do it well? Like that's the question that I want more leaders to be really interrogating is if I'm going to run an inclusive, equitable, welcoming space that is full of people from different backgrounds, different races, classes, ethnicities, genders, sexual orientations, lived experience, college degrees or not, all of those things. How do I do it well? And how do I do it well using the tools available to me in this moment? Because if I can't do it well, based purely on demographics, I'm not going to be set up to succeed.
Yeah. But I mean, I think part of that is also letting go of what we think of the other generations. You and I have seen this, we both on panels, and you were talking about it. Like a lot of the older generation, similar to like what we experience as millennials entering the workplace. Oh, you can't afford a house because of your avocado toast. Like, be for real. I can't afford a house because they are not affordable. Not because of my $14 avocado toast, which is now $25 at this rate. But a lot of older leaders are framing, I think, like Gen Z is like anti-work. Like I'm not a Kardashian fan, but that quote from Kim Kardashian stays rent-free in my head. It's like nobody wants to work anymore. We have to let go of those notions. Like, why do you think older generations end up doing this like portrayal of younger generations just because what they want is different or better? Or maybe it's like what we wanted, but would never say.
It's a tale as old as time of the older generations that are looking down and like the kids are lazy. The kids don't know what it's like to, walk uphill 3 miles both way in the snow. It's like, get over yourself. And I do think that there is a real tension happening where people are entering the workplace and having very different demands out of work, out of the role that it takes in their lives, out of what their leaders can deliver. They want transparency, they want accountability. Some of those things are reasonable, some of those are not. And I think the onus is on leadership to be really clear about what the role is that the company or the work will play in these people's lives, what the company can and can't deliver, not to overpromise, because I think that is a real mistake that people make.
Yep.
And to understand that transparency in particular, because I do think that's one of the challenges people have. Transparency is a gift. Clarity, as Brene Brown says, clarity is kindness. And you have to know the right amount of transparency and context provide. This is something that I have learned the hard way, that you can't, just because you can open people up to everything doesn't mean you should. And just because people want access to everything doesn't mean you should. You have to be really, really, really intentional. And oh my God, it's so fucking hard.
Yeah. One of the biggest debates I think that I've had as a people leader, and it's funny I say biggest debates, is like announcing employee departures or not. Every single company I have worked at, this has come up from either a CEO or an executive. Should we announce someone's departure or not? Should we tell people that this person left the company or should we not? And I think it depends on the size you are at, honestly, because like we are 55 people. If somebody doesn't work here anymore, they disappear from Slack. Everyone knows it. But like when you're a 2,000 person global company, maybe not so much, but it comes up every time because people are like, well, the employees want to know. And I always have to be like, yeah, they can want to know whatever they want to know. I don't have to tell them. Like it doesn't make me more credible or less credible if I'm telling them why people are leaving. Frankly, it's none of their business. I worked for as the CEO of Axios, Jim Vandehei, had two rules. Like, I'm not going to tell you why someone departs the company. It's really none of your business. And I'm not going to tell you anyone's compensation. And he would go back and say, like, you can ask me questions about anything else. I will tell you whatever you want to know. Those are the two things that are not up for discussion. And
no, I appreciate the clarity of that. Even if I don't actually totally agree with the compensation piece, but I appreciate the clarity of that. And you know what? That's a good expectation to set.
Yeah, I worked there years ago, 2021. So maybe he's changed his mind about the compensation piece, because I also agree with the pay transparency laws. You have to, and they have salary ranges on their job description. So like, I think that one may be less so now for him, but that's what he used to say back then. And I just appreciated it because he was upfront. Like he basically was like, this is who I am as a CEO. And I think it made him in that moment, like way more credible to me. Somebody who like really, I don't know. I have a delusional relationship with authority where I just think like everyone in power will do things in their best interest to fuck over all the rest of us. I'm working on it. Okay. I'm just youngest of 4 children. I question a lot of things, like, right? This is just me. But I think it made him very credible in my mind in a time where like I really did not trust leadership. Like when you're thinking about credibility, like younger leaders are really redefining what that looks like. What counts as like earned authority now versus what it was 10 to 15 years ago?
You know, not to bring it back to influencers, but I think a lot about some of the content creators I know who will say like, hey, the next story you're about to see on Instagram is an ad. I get more money if you engage with it. Please engage with it. Like, even if you don't like it, please engage with it. It's like that is so aggressively transparent and so not scummy. It makes me trust them. Like telling people the why of why you do things is so powerful. I have a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old. My 3-year-old is deep in the why phase, and boy, is it tiring. Like, why is that a door? Well, deep question, honey. Why is New Jersey? I don't know why is New Jersey. Why is New Jersey is, again, a really good question.
Why?
Yeah. Well, like really digging in and like giving into that impulse to say, because I said so, does not serve you and does not serve your team. When you can articulate the why and the reasoning behind things, even if they don't like the answer, they understand it. And I feel like that's one of the bigger lessons of leadership I've had to learn over the years is people can have insight without having input. Because they can know things. They can know how decisions are made. They can understand, how budgets are put together, whose participation was included. That doesn't mean they get to participate. And as long as you're incredibly clear about that and okay hurting people's feelings as part of the process, their feelings are actually kind of irrelevant here. They need insight. That doesn't mean input, and that's okay.
Yeah, the why to me, like I talk a lot about how HR leaders have to be good storytellers. And part of being like, not that we're spinning a narrative, but like we still have to understand stories and how they are told, because our employees will just make up their own stories if they don't get the answers. And the why to me is like every single one of your comms should explain why. Why are we doing this? Why are we getting together? Why was that decision made? You can do that without exposing confidential details. And all it does is just win their buy-in more. Like then they feel like I'm an active participant in this rather than not being an active participant in what's happening.
Either you give them a story or they're going to make up a story. You might as well have it be something that you can play a role in. And you want them to believe the story you're telling, so you need the trust.
Yeah. I made a comment recently, maybe it was on last season of the podcast too, where I said like the best novel writers are your employees. Mm-hmm. They will, for every gap that there is in any sort of anything, they will make up a story about it. Mm-hmm. Oh, your video wasn't on. Like, did you not agree with the decision being made? I'm like, how did you get from my video not being on to not agreeing with the decision being made? That leap is so wild, but it happens all the time.
Totally.
And so I think that credibility is like even more important. Where do you think organizations can consistently misread next gen employees? Like, you know, where we say we're being progressive and supportive and then we don't actually do that.
I think the relationship to work and to boundaries has been really interesting. We were talking a little bit earlier about the young people don't want to work anymore. It's like, no, they want their jobs to meet the time requirement you've asked of them. They want to deliver the results and are sort of regardless of where or when. And if you as the leader have not created the container for that to happen, if you haven't set up the communication structures, the approval processes, like the clear definitions of success or failure, that's actually a failure on you. If you can't make a flexible work environment work effectively, that's because you haven't done the work to create it. That is not a failure of employees. And I especially think the return to office stuff where they're like, there was a viral conversation across one of these platforms, all of them maybe about like, what is that, $120,000 for a remote job versus $220,000 for in office?
That debate was so annoying to me because I was on the wrong side of the debate, apparently. But what did you think of that?
Well, I think a lot depends on your circumstances, and also taxes play a role in how much you actually take home. But I think I don't have a personal position necessarily. I think people should really think about like, what is your highest value time? Like as a parent, remote work, there's no way I can make my life work without remote work.
That's what made me so mad because so many people were taking the stance like, you're crazy if you wouldn't take double the salary and take the $240 to be in office. Like whatever, I'll just be in office all 5 days of the week. Who cares? And I was looking at that debate like $120 for a mom to keep her job and get to work remotely versus $240 of her having to say, I can't even keep that job because I don't have childcare for 5 days of the week. Like that nuance was missing from the conversation. Everybody anchored it around money and take home pay. And I really approached it from what does it unlock for the person? Like, because a lot of moms cannot go into the office 5 days a week.
Time is valuable. Like my time, whether it's commuting, time with my kids, like being able to go to their 9 a.m. dance recital is huge. And if I can't do that, then like actually the $100,000 extra is not worth, like that's the trade. It's not just dollars to dollars. It's dollars minus time or time minus dollars. And actually right now at this stage in my life, my time is more important.
I felt like that was missing from everybody who was going viral for it. They were like, yeah, $240. Like you can't be dumb and not take the one. You can't be dumb and take the $120. Like it's so expensive to live. You have to take the $240. And I was like, we're missing the point. We're missing the point of the conversation. The point of the conversation is not the $120 or the $240. It's why are you forcing me to be in office to do a job that does not require me to physically be there?
Yeah, exactly right. And I think we've seen this return to office mandates have kicked women out of the workforce. And the thing I keep coming back to, like, this is not inevitable. This is a choice that leaders are making at every level. And they are deciding that having some sense of control and also their real estate costs are more important than half the population having fair economic participation.
Most HR tools give you dashboards full of data, but not a lot of direction. Quantum Workplace helps HR and people leaders connect the dots between engagement, performance, and development, so insights don't live in silos and decisions aren't made in the dark. The outcome? More confident leaders, stronger connections, and high-performing teams that support real business results, not just reports that sit untouched. If you're ready to move from collecting data to leading with it, check out Quantum Workplace at quantumworkplace.com. It's very interesting because people, when the DEI, I don't want to call it nonsense, but it was nonsense. And people were like, DEI is bad, or whatever, when all of that was starting last year. And a bunch of companies were like, no, we're standing by our initiative. We're going to do this. One of them was the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon. I always say Diamond, and that's not his name. It's Diamond. They came out and said, no, we're standing by our commitments, whatever. Then a few months goes by, and then they roll their back to office plan. They roll their out, like everyone needs to be, they built this amazing office apparently in New York City, invested a bunch of money to build this like incredible office in the middle of the city, and they want everyone back and using the office. And for me, I was like, wait a minute, you just told us you're committing to your DEI initiatives, that you want to build an equitable and inclusive workplace. And then you are turning around and saying, everyone come back to the office. And those two to me are in conflict, because we have seen the studies around women, those who are neurodiverse, those with disabilities, and those from underrepresented groups actually do better work at home. They're able to be flexible in their work, address the needs. Caregivers, like some working parents, like that's the thing I think is also missing from this conversation. We have an aging population. We're millennials, Gen X, and not Gen Z yet, I don't think, but we're caring for our parents right now. Mm-hmm. So like, we're not even just caring for our children, our offspring, we're also caregiving for our parents. And so it's like all of these factors are adding up, and going into an office every day stops you from doing those things. And I think that's one of the major forces of why we saw maybe 200,000 to 400,000 women leave the workplace last year. Because if you're making the trade-off, it's like, I have to care for my family. And to me, I'm like, you shouldn't have to make that trade-off. Just don't force a return to office mandate.
And I think as we look to the future, like the workplaces and the companies that succeed are going to be the ones that can do flexible. Sometimes it's fully remote, sometimes it's hybrid, couple days a week in the office, or like a couple days a month, whatever it might make sense for that company, or more aggressive in-person retreats over the course of the year. But to do that, you have to build remote first. Like even to make a flexible environment, you have to build remote first. And I think anecdotally, I think that's something for God bless our sweet boomers, it's really hard for them to understand and really hard for them to execute, because they've never had to build a friendship that was primarily based on group chats or chat rooms or Reddit forums or Facebook groups or, Instagram DMs. It like doesn't make sense to them that you could have that kind of relationship with someone that is primarily happening over the internet. Many of them. I always generalize, but like many of them.
No, I agree.
And for us, like that, of course you can. Of course you can. And to do it as a company leader, to do it as a company leader is harder, but you do it because it makes your team better.
It's not impossible. Yeah.
No,
I hate when people are like, oh, it's hard, so I don't want to do it. Or like my biggest pet peeve is when people say connection is better in the office. And I'm like, it's not. Like I have met some of my best friends in this world on the internet, on LinkedIn.
Well, and it's like that connection is often because we're like shooting the shit and not working. I thought this was about productivity.
There you go. Well, it's interesting because I'm like, why don't you just say that like it's visibility is actually what you all want? It's visibility and watching us and making sure we're doing our job. But like so many people confuse that visibility with things like power. Mm-hmm. And I think like the interesting part of your book and like stuff you've written about and even what we're observing in the workplace is like power, building power, I think looks very different today than it looked 10 years ago. And I think how younger leaders show up and organize, influence, or even push change within institutions also looks a lot different. So like, talk to me about how you wrote, because that was a part of me that really drew me to your book too, is like, no one's really talking about like the power struggle that it has been at work for the last few years, from COVID to the power going from the employee to the employer. And we're doing this constant push and pull. And right now it really feels like a lot of employers are in power. But how does the younger generation really think about this?
Well, I think they have a complicated relationship, which is that they want their workplace to provide for them in a meaningful way, but also sometimes they want more than the workplace can reasonably provide. And that's like an expectations problem. And, I heard from a lot of the folks I talked to, they would be like, I feel like I spend all day managing other adults' feelings. I'm running an adult daycare. It's not just managing the workload, it's managing how they feel about the workload and how they feel about their colleagues and how they feel about me. And it's like, yes, and some of that is good, some of that is not. How do you set the boundaries? How do you articulate what is the responsibility of leadership and what isn't? And having really clear perspective on how much of these are complaints that they are making because I am someone who can hear them versus complaints they are making that actually have like legitimacy to fix. Because I do think we've seen this in all kinds of environments, at the workplace, in activism, in politics, in all kinds of places. Are you punching the enemy you can reach, or are you punching the enemy who could solve the problem? And like discernment between those is really, really important. And that's something I think younger employees, as there's like big structural changes that they can't fix. Like, you can't fix structural racism. You can't fix ICE murdering people in the streets. I mean, you can try. We're trying, but like it feels hard. But I can make sure my boss is doing a little bit more to make this a better workplace. And that feels like a problem I can feasibly solve. So that's the one I'm going to tackle. And I'm going to make it my boss's life nightmare until they do. And like understanding that that's where that's coming from.
Yeah.
And then, thinking about it in that context of like, actually, what can you solve? That is how you negotiate power in this moment.
That's so interesting you say that, because you're right. Like I feel powerless to so many things happening in the world. But at work, like, I mean, I'm a C-suite executive, so like, understandably, I have a lot of power, but like still there are decisions I cannot enact without the buy-in from my CEO. But as I think about that, you're right. Like potentially work is the place where they see themselves being able to change the thing they're doing 8 hours of the day, when the rest of the hours in the day we're looking at this world that feels increasingly scarier and more violent and more intense than it has ever felt before. And we can't stop that from happening.
Not to compare my employees to my toddler again, but there is something really like, when you're working with living your life around tiny children, like you can see sort of human nature in real time without any shame, any sort of boundaries. It's like, she just wants control over what she can control. And when she can't decide between the red shirt and the blue shirt, like her brain melts down. She has a temper tantrum. And in some cases, I'm not saying employees are having like toddler style temper tantrums, but it's that same impulse redirected. And I think really understanding that like a lot of this is about controlling what you can and discerning what you can't.
Yeah.
It gives you at least a little more empathy, if not always sympathy.
So are we all just control freaks? Is that what you're telling me? I'm kidding. I am a control freak, to be clear. To be very clear, I am a control freak. Like I know that about myself, and I am actively working on it. Giving up control to other people, and I'm not very good at it. It's tough.
It's hard.
Yeah, when you feel like so many things are outside your control and you look at work, like I do joke sometimes, like if I ever had kids, I think I'd be a fine mother, because I've been dealing with employees for so long that I'm like, I know they're going to have a temper tantrum over this. I know they're not going to like that. Like I'm always thinking about what the temper tantrum is going to be. And then I'm like, can I build a better experience so we don't have the temper tantrum? Probably not. Can I communicate it so if I communicate ahead of time, maybe the temper tantrum is less? Usually it does not work. Sometimes it does. But like everyone is going to feel a way. That's the other thing that I think is really interesting, looking at older generations when they're talking to young or giving advice to younger generations in the workplace. Oh, just suck it up. How often when you started your career did you hear that from a boss?
Yeah.
I heard it so often.
I worked 100-hour weeks, so should you. I'm like, no, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have, and I shouldn't. That
I'm
sucks.
like, I don't want to answer your text at 10 p.m. at night. No, thank you. You can message me during the working hours. So I think like that is also really interesting. And it has been like so I have older siblings. I constantly joke that I'm millennial by age, but Gen X by soul, because my siblings are all Gen X and all my references tend to come from Gen X. And I tend to get along really well with people older than me, and they're always surprised. But I'm like, those are my siblings. Like I just wanted to be a part of the community of siblings, because they're 11, 10, and 7 years older than me. So they're squarely like within each other's age range. And I am the much younger, hip sister. My sister will not admit that. She'll say I'm the dork and she's the cool one. But it's interesting because like even getting advice from my siblings, like I was changing jobs every 2 years when I was early in my career. And my brother was like, what are you doing? You have to stay at that job for like at least 5 to 10 years. I was like, 5 to 10 years, my guy, how am I going to survive on 5 to 10 years when I'm only getting like 3% increases in my compensation? Like that's wild. The only way to get a better job or to get more money is to get a better job. Now I just read a study that like the average person who's leaving and taking a different job is making more of like a lateral move because pay has been so compressed and it's terrible right now. But it really brought up interesting conversations with my siblings around like, should I stay? And loyalty was like a big one. My brother was like, oh, if you're just like loyal to the company, like they're going to reward you. And again, remember, I have my disbelief and distrust of authority. So I was like, they're going to reward me for staying here? Absolutely not. So I think loyalty has also been a really interesting part of this conversation with power. It's like loyalty looks so different for the next generation of leaders. how do you think it's different right now? Like, what do you think like the younger generation is saying versus older generations around loyalty?
They have no relationship to institutions. And like, if anything,
Love
it's a
that.
net negative. And I think that's probably fine. And like
Yeah.
understanding that, and like they, in campaigns, we'll say people come for the candidate, they stay for the people they meet on the campaign, they stay for the other
Mm,
volunteers. The
yeah.
same is true at a workplace. You come maybe for the company, the brand name, the mission, but you stay for the manager, you stay for your coworkers, you stay for your colleagues until you can't. I think that relationship to institutions and to like, is it the company's job to care for me? No, it's not the company's job. Now, if the company says that it's their job to care for me and then they don't, then it's the company's fault. But I
Yes.
need to like manage my own expectations about what I'm expecting out of my workplace.
It's so interesting because there's that joke that's always on TikTok that is like, if you died today, like your company would post your job tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, if you did
Yeah.
die today, like eventually I would have to backfill that role. Like, yeah, that would be posted. And so when people always ask me, like friends ask me for advice, like, should I stay? I just like, I really like, I feel a lot of sense of loyalty. I'm like, my advice is like, you should have loyalty to no one but yourself if
No,
it's not serving you.
I gave a talk on a college campus earlier this fall. Part of my usual spiel is talking about like, work won't love you back. It won't. That's okay. And you have to be really mindful of that. And as a leader, that's really hard to navigate because often you are the leader because you've worked hard, because you've risen, because you do love your job. Like you don't become an executive if you don't like to work hard in most cases.
Yeah.
Sometimes you fail up, but for most people,
I wish.
you don't become like a C-suite member or a team leader unless you actually really care.
Yeah.
And you have to draw a boundary about that. And a boomer, this older guy from the community, came up to me after and he was like, I just got to tell you, when you said work won't let me back, that hit me right in the gut because I'm at the end of my career and you're right. And if I had known that earlier on, I would have made some different choices. It's like, that's soul crushing. I'm so sorry. I hate that resonated, but I'm glad it did because like that's the realization that I think millennial and Gen Z leaders and employees are coming in to work with, and that it's not going to love me back. So how can I give what I need to give without giving too much?
Yeah. It's such an interesting conversation to have with like, so I've worked at 4 venture-backed startups. I like live and breathe and die for a startup. I honestly think there's probably something wrong with me because I love the chaos. But the interesting part of it too is listening to founders when they talk about the company and it's their idea. They're so motivated by it. And I've had conversations with founders where they're like, I just don't get like why the employees are not working as hard as like I would work. And every time I'm like, it's your company. They will never work as hard as you. Like you have more to gain and more to lose by this company being successful than the average employee. And you need to understand like that relationship is different. Like not that already because we're all distrusting of institutions, but even at the startup, it's like nobody is going to be as intense about your startup other than you. And I think like that you have to be real about it.
I am one of the co-founders of my organization. I have been working here this will be year number 10. It is, baby number 2. I would say my dog was first baby. Organization is second baby. Actual babies are third and fourth babies.
Yeah.
Book is somewhere in there too. I love what I do. And part of the growth for me over the last decade has been understanding that while what I do is so interesting and so important, and it is core to who I am, it is not all of who I am. And how do I model the kind of engagement with the company that I want for my employees? And how do I understand that, like, yeah, I'm going to give a lot, but it's mine.
Yeah,
like,
it's yours.
I'm always going to love my baby more than anyone else. I'm going to think my baby's the most beautiful baby, the most meaningful baby, the most important baby. No one else is going to agree with that. And that's okay. They don't have to. But I do need my employees to give enough to get us successful. And I need them bought in on the mission, and I need them to understand what success looks like and what my expectations are. And that's my job.
Yeah. It's so interesting because I feel like I'm feeling this friction so real at organizations. I'm hearing a lot of these like undertones about the changing like views of leadership and the younger generation. And it just feels like we're in the thick of it right now. So like this friction feels so relevant, I think, to like a lot of HR leaders listening to this are probably like, shit, I'm dealing with that right now. Because like the average founder will be like, oh, but like they're not so bought in, so they're not as engaged and they're not doing as good work. And I'm like, we need to have an elevated conversation about like what purpose work serves in our life. And I did an episode on this earlier in the podcast around like fulfillment, boundaries, and how you think of yourself. And it was a really interesting episode with my friend Ayana, because we talked a lot about how we anchored so much of our identity in the work we were doing, and how the best thing a lot of people could do is realize that that's not how people get fulfillment anymore.
It's not.
Because people aren't staying at jobs for pension. Like, we're looking at a very interesting and scary world where the loyalty is just like not there anymore. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it then makes our communication and our expectation setting even clearer for people. We don't need to promise to be a family. We're not. We're a community of people doing work. This does not need to always be your number one priority, but you need to show up and take care of the work that's expected of you and then go live your life.
And I write at length about how to create an environment where that's possible. Like, how do you create a flexible work environment? How do you do? I have a 4-day work week. It's awesome. I love my 4-day work week. It is also, I think, the future of work for many places in which work takes up less time, more effective, less time. There's a bunch of different ways in which leaders can be really clear about this. And the nice thing for us as millennial and Gen Z leaders who are taking power in this moment, because already a majority of managers are millennials, according to some studies from last year, and it's just going to increase. And, millennials and Gen Z will be the majority of the workforce in the next 5 years. Our peers, our generational cohort is going to come into their positions with very different relationships to work. And us as leaders need to be responsive to that and also deal with the internal struggle around that we also share.
Yeah.
We can do this. The fact that there is not a playbook for this anymore, the fact that like my dad stayed at the same law firm for 40 years, that is unfathomable to me.
Same.
It's like truly unimaginable. The fact that I've had a same job for 10 years is bananas to me. You had told me 10 years ago this was the case, I would not have believed you. That's unusual. And I think that for us is both very scary, but the reframe to that is its opportunity. We get to reimagine what the future looks like. The way that we did things yesterday does not have to be the way we do them tomorrow. And that's good, because the way they are today kind of sucks for a lot of people.
That's such a good mindset shift. I also talk about that, like, work was built, that concept of a 5-day work week, how this all came to be. A lot of our systems were built when the average person in the workforce was a straight, able-bodied, married white man who had a partner at home doing a lot of the home stuff. And so I think like that means a lot of our systems were built for that person's success. And now we're coming up on this friction of these systems are crumbling. They're not serving us anymore. And that, as an HR person, can be really scary. Like, don't get me wrong, there are days where I spiral about, oh God, how will I fix this process that everybody is conditioned to do a certain way, but I want to do radically different. But again, that optimism is also what keeps me going, because it is clearly not working for the average person. Like, engagement, all-time low. People's involvement in the workplace, all-time low. Like, the average person, if you were to ask them, like, do you love your job? The answer would be no. I just do it because I need to make money and live my life. Like, I'm not saying we should have to all love our jobs, but I'm saying like the systems that we create as HR should not make people hate their lives more.
Not every day needs to be a trip to Disneyland, but no day should be a nightmare.
Yeah. Oh, that's an excellent place to end this episode. Your advice on mindset shift was so good, but I do want to end with one of my favorite quotes from your book, which everyone should go buy this book. It's called When We Were in Charge, and Amanda wrote it. Okay, I have to read you because I giggled and wrote dead in the corner. If you are not millennial or Gen Z, that's okay. I'll preemptively ask for your forgiveness because I know those outside those generations might take offense to some of what I write. I take offense at the lack of affordable housing and the increased likelihood that my kids will have to fight in the water wars, so consider us even. I'm going to use we to describe next-gen leaders. Don't take it personally if you don't identify accordingly. Consider this your field guide to understanding how leadership norms are shifting. When I read that, the reason why it was my favorite part was I just died, because you were like, I don't want you to be offended, but I'm also deeply offended by the world that my children will inherit and the next generation of our leaders will inherit, because that world is not looking good right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have so much opportunity, which is what I think excited me most about this book, and excited me most about the fact that maybe I won't have to have the same conversation again about why the 4-day work week could work. My CEO is against it. I am pro, and we have a really funny, every once in a while, we have a funny debate about it, just like we have debates about pay transparency. it's interesting because I'm like, maybe in the next 10 to 15 years, I will work with a Gen Z leader or a millennial. My CEO is a millennial, a Gen Z a CEO who sees the world radically different because they've experienced the world radically different, which means the systems I build could be radically different.
And that is the opportunity. That is the freedom. That's the hope.
I have so much inspiration for the next few years of our lives. This book really gave me so much, Amanda. I'm still making my way through it. There's so much of it that I just found myself like saying yes, yes, yes. And then like I told you, giggling on the plane as I was reading it.
Thank
and I was like, I should probably stop giggling to myself in public places, but we'll never stop. Here we are.
Appreciate that.
For anyone who's looking at what does it mean to be a leader or how to navigate the current friction we are very rarely feeling, I encourage you to pick up this book because I think a large part of the friction, the discomfort, the things we were feeling at work not working get addressed in this book. Amanda, thank you for joining me today. Now, for people who want to get in touch with you, this is a recurring bit I now tend to do on this podcast because everyone's answer is exactly the same, but I'm still going to ask, how should people get in touch with you?
So I'm online at amandalitman.com. I have a Substack I do every week. You can find it there. I'm on all the different social media platforms. I'm yapping away all across place, either Amanda LITM or Amanda Litman. Whatever platform you're on, I'm unfortunately there. So find me.
I will have to. Usually everyone just says LinkedIn, but you're like the first person who I know is on every single platform. So I was like, I have to. Now I really have to ask my recurring bit question.
Love.
I like get your tweets. You're on TikTok, right?
I'm on TikTok. I'm on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Substack. I'm on Threads. I'm on Blue Sky. I'm on Facebook sometimes. I'm so tired. I'm so tired.
I will find you. I think I follow you on like 8 out of 10 of those. Great. Honestly, I will have to find. I'm not on Threads. I'm not on Blue Sky. I don't even want to be on X, but I'm there.
It's not good on any of them. So
it's really, people are really mean on that one and I don't like it. But yeah, this has been so great. I hope to have you back again. This was like helpful on leadership. Maybe next time we will be talking about our rom-coms that are being published.
Love that. God willing.
You better be my accountability partner.
Deal.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.